a werewolf shifter fantasy romance by your one and only Maple. Chapter 1. Shadows of Home. The first light of dawn crept through the cracked shutters, brushing against the stone floors of the Silverwood estate. Aria stirred, her body aching from another night spent on the hard floor of the attic room that had been hers only in name. Dust clung stubbornly to her hair and skin, as if it were part of her now. She rubbed her palms together, knuckles raw, and pushed herself upright. Another day of labor awaited. Her stepmother, Lady Evelina, had been up before the sun, issuing commands in that sharp, cold tone that could freeze the breath in a room. "Aria, the firewood isn't stacked. The floors still smell of last night's soot. And don't think I haven't noticed the dust on the windowsills." Aria bowed her head, the ache in her shoulders sharpening with each word. She had learned long ago that protests were useless. Any hint of defiance earned her only more labor and sharper words. Her stepsister, Lyria, floated into the hall, her silken gown brushing the floor, her laughter light and cruel. "Honestly, Aria," she said, voice dripping with mock sympathy, "I don't know why Father even keeps you around. It's embarrassing." Aria's lips pressed into a thin line. She swallowed the retort that rose in her throat. She was used to being invisible. The floors were her friends, the broom her companion, and the endless chores her punishment. Her father, a man once gentle and kind, had grown cold and distant, poisoned by the words of his new wife. He passed her by in the hall, eyes averted, voice a mere echo in the distance. Aria's heart ached at the sight, though she had learned to hide it. Yet in the quiet moments, as she scrubbed floors and swept halls, her thoughts drifted to the stories her mother once whispered to her at night. Tales of the lineage, of wolves who had stood between humans and their kind, and of magic in their blood. Her wolf, dormant for years, lay quiet within her. She could not sense it, could not call upon it, and so it slept like a wounded creature. Still, in her chest, something restless stirred. A small ember of hope, faint but alive, and that hope found her in the form of an envelope, gilded and stamped with the royal crest. It arrived in the mid-morning sunlight, carried by a uniformed messenger who bowed low. Aria's heart skipped a beat. She'd never been chosen for anything like this. She tore open the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside lay an invitation, elegant, formal, and irrefutable. A grand 3-day mating ball will be held at the royal palace in honor of His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince. The words blurred before her eyes. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Before she could react, Lady Evelina snatched the invitation from her hands. "Lyria will attend, of course," she said, voice silk over steel. "She is exquisite. She is everything a prince could desire. And you—" She leaned close, her smile venomous. "You are not welcome. That ball is no place for a servant girl like you." Aria's lips parted, but no words came. She had known this cruelty all her life. Yet, as she returned to the chores that filled her day, her mind kept drifting to that invitation, to the golden possibility it represented. That night, after her family had retired and the house settled into silence, Aria crept down the hall. She carried a small ring of keys, collected over years of cleaning, each one a reminder of the many doors she was forbidden to open. She stopped before a tall, imposing door at the end of the wing, her mother's wing, sealed and forgotten since the day her mother had died. Her fingers trembled as she tried the first key. Nothing. The second. Nothing. The 8th. Still nothing. Finally, on the 10th attempt, the lock clicked. The door sighed open as if exhaling after 10 long years. Dust motes danced in the silver light spilling through the cracked windows. The air smelled of forgotten lavender and old wood, a fragrance that made her throat tighten. Inside, the room was frozen in time. Books lined the shelves, untouched. Jewelry rested in velvet boxes. And there, in the center, a wardrobe held the dresses her mother had once worn. Aria approached it, heart hammering. She slid open the doors and gasped. Gowns of silk lace and velvet shimmered in the moonlight, each more beautiful than anything she had ever imagined. Then her eyes fell on a gown of soft blush rose pink. The bodice hugged the chest gently, adorned with delicate glass beads that caught the light like morning dew. The neckline was framed by sheer lace that draped over her shoulders, ethereal and modest, revealing just enough of her collarbone to seem elegant. The skirt flowed in layers, light and airy, as if it had been spun from clouds. A matching velvet choker dotted with tiny pearls completed the ensemble. She pressed the dress to her chest, her heart clenching. For the first time in 10 years, she allowed herself to imagine being seen not as a servant, but as something more. The dress would be her secret, her hope, her rebellion against the shadows that had defined her life, and somewhere deep inside, she felt the faintest stirring of her wolf, the smallest whisper of life that would one day awaken in full. Chapter 2. The Royal Invitation. The morning air was crisp with the scent of pine and frost as Aria returned to her chores, but the invitation clutched tightly in her pocket burned against her palm like a secret flame. She had not slept, thinking of the palace, of the music, of a world where she might, just for a few nights, be free of dust, rags, and the constant sneers of her stepmother and stepsister. Lady Evelina's voice rang sharp from the hall, dragging Aria back to her reality. "Aria, the hearth isn't lit enough. I said the floors must sparkle, not merely appear clean." Aria's hands moved automatically, scrubbing, sweeping, polishing. Her mind, however, was elsewhere, tracing the image of the grand ballroom, the towering ceilings, the glittering chandeliers, and the prince. Though she didn't know his name yet, the thought of a powerful, commanding presence, a wolf strong enough to rival the mightiest in the kingdom, filled her chest with both fear and longing. By midday, Aria's secret world began to form. After the family had left for their own appointments and errands, she slipped into the forbidden wing. The keys jingled faintly as she tried the one that had worked the night before. The door opened easily now, as if welcoming her return. Dust rose in clouds as she stepped inside, the air heavy with the scent of lavender and aged wood. Her gaze fell again on the pink gown. Moonlight streaming through the tall windows made the beads shimmer like frozen stars. Aria's fingers trembled as she traced the embroidery, imagining how it would feel against her skin, imagining the music, the dancing, the lights. She carefully lifted the gown and folded it against her chest. With it, she returned to her room, hiding it beneath the floorboards beneath her bed, her treasure, her rebellion, her hope. The next 2 days passed in a blur of labor. She cleaned, cooked, and scrubbed, with the precision of someone whose life had been measured in chores and repetition. But every night she returned to her secret sanctuary, touching the fabric, smelling the faint perfume that lingered in the folds, imagining herself beneath the crystal chandeliers, the music sweeping her away, the prince's eyes finding hers across the crowd. On the evening of the ball, her family departed in a carriage resplendent with velvet and silver trim. The air was thick with excitement, their laughter spilling into the streets. Aria paused in her attic room, staring at her reflection in the small, cracked mirror. Her black hair had been washed and brushed until it gleamed like the night sky. Her gold eyes, so often dimmed by soot and sorrow, sparkled. She slipped into the pink gown, the lace soft and cool against her skin, the beads catching the candlelight. She fastened the matching choker at her throat, feeling a shiver of anticipation. For a moment she allowed herself a small smile. This was the first time she had seen herself as anyone but a servant. This was the first time she had felt beautiful, powerful, seen. The question now was how to reach the palace. The main roads were bustling with nobles and their carriages. Aria, cautious and clever, waited by the street and flagged down a passing carriage. She gave a simple excuse, a late invitation, a desire to arrive safely, and the travelers, softened by her grace and unexpected elegance, agreed to take her. The journey was breathtaking. The forest stretched endlessly on either side, bathed in silver moonlight, and the roads shimmered with dew. The palace finally came into view, a towering structure of silver stone with spires that reached as though to touch the moon itself. Thousands of lanterns glimmered on its walls, reflecting in the rippling surface of the surrounding moat. The sheer grandeur stole Aria's breath. When they reached the gates, she could see the ball unfolding inside. Women in gowns of every color and style, masked and jeweled, conversing beneath sparkling chandeliers. Music floated out, soft and sweet yet commanding, drawing her in like the pull of the tide. But then she noticed it, the masks. Panic rose in her chest. She had not known it was a masked ball. Her throat tightened, but a butler, noticing her hesitation, approached with a gentle bow. "My lady, a mask if you please," he said, holding out a delicate silver mask adorned with pink feathers and pearls. "You may enter." She placed it carefully over her eyes, the cool metal brushing against her skin. The crowd beyond seemed like a dream, an endless sea of glittering gowns, masks, and laughter, beneath the vast expanse of a ceiling so high it seemed to pierce the sky itself. Aria drifted toward the windows, away from the crowd, drawn to the view of the moonlit gardens and the quiet magic of the kingdom beyond. Here, she was alone with her thoughts. And yet, not for long. A voice, low and smooth as velvet, touched her ear. "Do you prefer quiet places too?" Aria turned. Before her stood a man whose presence seemed to command the air itself. Broad-shouldered, dark-haired, with eyes that burned with molten intensity, he radiated strength and authority. Yet there was a gentleness in his gaze. I do," she murmured. He smiled, a slow, careful curve of his lips. "May I join you?" Her heartbeat quickened. She nodded, and they began to speak. Softly, cautiously, yet with an unspoken connection, as if the world had narrowed to just the two of them. He asked her to dance. She agreed, but only near the window. Together, they moved lightly, talking of the stars, of the view, of the wonder of being in a place where one could feel the world shift beneath their feet. Then a whispered word reached him from across the room. His expression changed. Something fierce and urgent stirred in his gaze. He excused himself politely and disappeared toward the king. Aria, caught in the wonder of the night, did not know he was the crown prince. She did not know that in those few moments he had already sensed her as his fated mate. And when he returned, she had vanished. Chapter 3. Echoes after the ball. The night air wrapped Aria like a cloak as she slipped silently from the palace grounds, the pink gown now slightly dusted from the carriage ride. She had no desire to be discovered by the servants or nobles. She had come, she had danced, and she had seen enough. Enough to know that she had glimpsed something extraordinary, something she could never yet claim. The streets of Silvercrest were quiet, lit by the soft glow of lanterns. Aria's heart still beats in a rapid rhythm, echoes of music and laughter lingering in her mind. She could still feel the warmth of the stranger's presence, the gentle strength in his hands, the way his eyes seemed to see straight into her. She tried to remember his face clearly, but it felt like a dream slipping through her fingers. By the time she reached home, the household had settled into their routine silence. Lady Evelina and Lyria were gone, gloating about their own experiences at the ball, while her father napped behind the massive oak desk in the library, unaware of her return. Aria quietly undressed in the privacy of her attic room, folding the pink gown with meticulous care and hiding it once again beneath the floorboards. She scrubbed away any trace of the evening, returning to her usual grime and tattered skirts, as though nothing had happened. From below came the echo of laughter and conversation. Her stepmother and stepsister were already regaling her father with tales of grand dances, of handsome suitors, of whispered glances and promises. Aria listened, silent, as the words pierced her chest. "I must say," Lady Evelina said, her voice sweet but sharp, "Lyria's grace tonight could put even the finest nobles to shame. A prince would be foolish to ignore her." Aria's fingers tightened into fists. She had no words. She had learned long ago that her father, kind yet gullible, would not intervene. He remained silent, nodding absently at the stories, lost in his own thoughts. And yet, something inside her stirred, not despair, but a quiet determination. She had danced, she had felt the world shift beneath her feet, and though her wolf had not yet stirred, she knew this was only the beginning. The Alpha's fury. Far across the kingdom, in the grand towers of the royal palace, The crown prince paced the marbled floors of his private chambers. The music of the ball still lingered in his mind, though the ballroom itself was now empty. He had searched every corridor, every balcony, every shadowed corner for the girl who had captured his attention. She was unlike any maiden he had ever seen. Strong in presence, delicate yet unyielding, a quiet flame that refused to be extinguished. And though he could not sense her wolf, though her aura remained hidden, he knew with an unshakable certainty that she was the one, the fated mate the moon had promised him. Frustration burned through him. How could someone so powerful remain hidden, so near and yet so untouchable? His wolf growled within him, restless and impatient, echoing his own anger. At last he slammed a fist against the carved oak desk, his jaw rigid. "Enough," he muttered. "If she will not come to me, then I will bring the world to her." And so the decree was issued. A full census of the kingdom's young maidens, their families and households would be conducted. Every family must report to the town square within 5 days. Every corner of the realm would be scoured until he found his mate. It was a task as monumental as it was meticulous, but Kyle was relentless. He oversaw the first segments personally, his alpha presence filling the square like a storm. Guards and clerks moved with precise efficiency, but no maiden fit the memory of the girl from the ball. Kyle's patience thinned with every passing day, yet he refused to give up. Somewhere, hidden behind dust and rags, behind fear and neglect, his mate waited. He could feel it in the pull of destiny, in the whisper of the moon, in the rhythm of his own heartbeat. Aria's hidden world. Meanwhile, back at Silverwood Manor, Aria continued her routine, her secret burning brightly in her chest. She longed to return to the ball, to see the towering palace, to dance again under the moonlight, but she knew she could not. Not yet. She did not even know where to start. Her wolf remained silent, a shadow sleeping in the depths of her chest. Perhaps it was the years of cruelty and neglect. Perhaps the fear that had dulled her senses. But she could not yet feel the call of her mate, could not yet sense the bond that had already marked her for life. She washed floors, tended fires, and cleaned every corner of the house as her family bickered and boasted. And each night, in the quiet moments, she thought of the pink gown, of the view from the palace windows, of the voice that had stirred something in her chest. She did not yet know him by name, and she could not yet see his face clearly. But somehow, deep inside, she knew she would meet him again. And when she did, nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 4. The Alpha's Hunt. The sun had barely risen when Aria's family was roused from their slumber. Rumors of a royal census had spread through the kingdom like wildfire, and Silverwood Manor was not exempt. Lady Evelina's shrill voice cut through the hall, demanding the family rise and prepare for the day's inspection. Aria, as usual, moved silently, her hair tangled, her clothes dust-stained, her hands raw from the endless chores she had performed since dawn. She followed her family down the winding staircases, careful to stay behind the grandeur of Lyria's sparkling gown and her stepmother's perfect composure. The town square buzzed with energy as nobles, merchants, and commoners alike gathered. Each segment of the kingdom had been called on a different day. Aria's family's turn was last. The crowd of young women was dazzling. Bright eyes, elegant dresses, the confident aura of those accustomed to being seen. Aria felt the familiar twinge of invisibility settle in her chest, a shadow she could not shake. Then he appeared. Kyle Arden, the crown prince, stepped into the square. His presence was impossible to ignore. The ground seemed to hum with the energy he carried, the controlled power of a wolf, the dominance of an alpha, the command of a future king. Even the guards fell silent, instinctively deferring to his authority. Aria's breath caught. She had seen many men in her life, but none like him. He moved with the fluidity of a predator and the precision of a soldier. His gaze swept the crowd, and when it fell upon her, something inside him roared. At first, he did not recognize her. She was not the radiant girl of the ball. Dust clung to her hair, her shoulders were stooped from years of labor. Her dress, though once beautiful, was hidden beneath plain skirts. But then, he smelled her. The scent of her bloodline, strong and undeniable, hit him like a tidal wave. Her aura, faint, sleeping, yet impossibly potent, pulled at him. His wolf howled in recognition, echoing the longing in his chest. Kale moved toward her in a single, purposeful stride, cutting through the crowd. Aria froze, heart hammering. Who was this man whose eyes seemed to see straight into her soul? Aria Silverwood, he said, his voice low and commanding, yet threaded with something softer. Recognition, relief, and restrained fury. She blinked, her lips parted. I don't know words, he interrupted, his amber gold eyes locking onto hers. Not yet. Before she could react, he grabbed her wrist with an iron grip that was neither cruel nor weak, and the crowd parted instinctively around them. Whispers spread like wildfire. The prince had chosen his mate. Murmurs turned to gasps as he led her toward his waiting carriage, his strength and dominance unyielding, alpha presence radiating like sunlight through the clouds. Aria trembled, confusion mingling with awe. She could not yet sense him as her mate, not fully. Yet something deep inside whispered. He was the one she had danced with, the one she had felt in that fleeting moment at the palace. But now he seemed larger, more commanding, almost otherworldly. The carriage ride was quiet at first. Kael's grip on her wrist loosened, replaced by a careful watchfulness. Every so often he would glance at her, amber gold eyes softening with an intensity that made her chest ache. Why? Why me? Aria finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kael's jaw tightened. Because you are mine. Because the moon has marked you, and I will not allow anything, or anyone, to take you from me. Aria's wolf stirred faintly at his words, a small whisper of life she had not felt in years. Her pulse quickened, her senses sharpening just slightly, though the full awakening was still beyond reach. She realized then that this man, the fierce, dominant alpha prince, was not just a stranger. He was her future, her fate, her mate. By the time the carriage reached the palace, Aria's world had shifted. The grandeur of the castle seemed to bend around them, the moonlight reflecting off the silvered spires as if celebrating her return. Kael led her through the vast halls, his steps confident, each movement radiating authority. Once inside the private quarters, Kael finally released her wrist, allowing her to breathe. You will be safe here, he said. No one will harm you, not ever again. Aria's chest swelled with gratitude and something more, an unfamiliar heat, a thrill that came from being seen, chosen, and protected. Her wolf stirred again, stronger this time, sensing the bond that had finally been fulfilled. A shiver ran down her spine, and when she looked into Kael's eyes, she saw the same recognition, the same awakening. The alpha had found his mate, and the mate had found her alpha. Chapter 5: Awakening and Bonding. The moon hung high and silver over the palace grounds, spilling light across the polished floors and marble columns. Inside the private wing Kael had secured for her, Aria paced nervously, her old gown now folded neatly on a chaise, replaced with simple, comfortable clothing. Though her wolf had stirred during the ride, it was now ready to awaken fully, a force suppressed by years of neglect, fear, and sorrow. Kael watched her from across the room, his alpha presence filling the space with quiet authority. Every movement he made, every subtle glance, seemed to draw the air itself toward him. Yet he softened as he looked at her, fragile, unkempt, yet radiant in ways she herself did not yet recognize. You're safe here, he said again, but there was something more, an edge in his tone that conveyed protection, desire, and ownership all at once. No one can touch you. Not them, not the world, not even fate itself if I have anything to say. Aria swallowed hard, her throat dry. I don't understand, she whispered. Why me? Why now? Kael stepped closer, each movement deliberate, radiating strength, yet careful not to overwhelm her. Because you are the one the moon has marked, the one I have been searching for, even before I knew you existed. His gaze locked onto hers, amber gold eyes burning like molten sunlight. And your wolf? It has been waiting for me, waiting for this moment. A shiver ran through her as the words resonated deep in her chest. Her wolf stirred violently now, an electric pulse of energy coursing through her veins. Her senses sharpened, the faint hum of the palace walls, the scent of the garden outside, the subtle warmth radiating from Kyle's body. She could hear the heartbeat of the castle, the distant rhythm of guards on patrol, even the wind brushing against the trees in the palace courtyard. Kyle reached out, placing his hand lightly on her shoulder. "It's time," he murmured. "Let it bloom." Aria's chest tightened as a surge of power broke through her, cascading in waves from her core. Her vision sharpened, her reflexes quickened, and her body hummed with raw energy. She let out a low guttural growl, and Kyle mirrored it, a wolf's echo flowing through his veins, their bond humming like a thread of silver fire connecting them. Her hair lifted slightly as the energy coursed through her, her senses now fully awake. She could feel his presence in ways she had never imagined, his heartbeat, his intent, his strength, all entwined with her own. For the first time, she recognized him not just as the man who had sought her, but as the alpha she had danced with under the moonlight. You're my mate," she whispered, awe and wonder threading her voice. Kyle's lips curved into a rare, gentle smile. "Yes, and you are mine. Always." The moment stretched, suspended between them as the palace seemed to shrink around their bond. He moved closer, and she did not flinch. Instead, she leaned slightly into him, drawn by the magnetic force of his presence. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing softly along her jawline, grounding her. "Tell me," he said softly, "why have you hidden from me?" Tears pricked her eyes, not from fear but from the relief of finally being seen. I could not shift," she admitted. "I could not feel my wolf. Not after everything. I thought I was broken." Kyle's eyes darkened, fury and protection mingling in a stormy haze. "Broken?" he growled. "No one touches you, no one makes you small, and no one keeps you from your power, not ever again." He rose abruptly, his aura flaring, and the room seemed to pulse with his dominance. Aria's wolf responded, a soft, hungry growl vibrating from her chest. She felt it, the raw, untamed energy of her lineage. Melding with him, their bond cementing, their souls tethering in a way that left no room for doubt. "Come," Kyle said, voice low, commanding yet tender. "You will live here, with me. No one will ever harm you again. You will grow, you will shift, you will learn your strength. And together, we will be unstoppable." Aria's breath caught. For the first time in her life, she did not feel invisible. She felt seen, chosen, powerful, alive. And when their lips met in a slow, deliberate brush, it was not just passion. It was recognition, destiny, and the awakening of two wolves finally reunited. The first night passed with whispered words and quiet revelations. Kyle was patient, but his protective alpha nature never waned. He shared stories of the kingdom, of the prophecy of fated mates, of the line of Silverwood wolves that had once protected humans. Aria listened, her heart swelling with pride and love, her wolf purring with awakening delight. As dawn approached, Kyle held her close. "Rest now," he murmured, amber eyes soft and warm. "Tomorrow we will deal with the rest. Your family, your past. But tonight is ours." Aria nodded, finally feeling safe enough to close her eyes, her wolf fully alive, her bond with Kyle sealed by the moon and their hearts. The first chapter of their true life together had begun. Chapter 6, Confrontation and Reckoning. The sun had barely risen over Silverwood Manor when a distant rumble reached the estate, shaking the windows and stirring the servants into nervous murmurs. Aria, dressed in her simplest attire, stood at the threshold of the main hall, her heart beating with anticipation and fear. She had more urgent matters than elegance. From the horizon came the unmistakable sound of hooves on cobblestone and the rhythmic march of armored soldiers. Kyle rode at the forefront, his presence alone enough to command attention. He was a storm of authority, his cloak billowing behind him, his wolf's aura radiating in sharp waves. Even from a distance, the household felt the weight of his arrival. Lady Evelina's laughter froze mid-phrase. What is this?" she hissed, staring through the windows. Your reckoning, Kyle's voice carried across the grounds, deep and commanding. The air vibrated with his alpha energy. It was impossible to ignore, impossible to challenge. Aria Silverwood is coming with me. You will release everything that belongs to her mother immediately. Fail, and you will answer to me directly. The stepsister, Lyria, paled, clutching her skirts in fear. She had always thrived on arrogance, but this was a force she could not bargain with. Aria's father, usually silent, shuffled forward, confusion and guilt warring across his face. Kyle's gaze locked onto him, piercing, unyielding. You allowed this girl to suffer. You allowed her potential, her wolf, her spirit to be suppressed for years. And you did nothing. Please, Aria interjected, voice trembling yet steady. My family deserves mercy. Punish them if you must, but let them live. I only ask for my mother's belongings. Kyle's eyes softened at her words, but the aura of alpha dominance remained. He turned to the soldiers. Guards, retrieve her mother's belongings, ensure every item she wishes to take is delivered, and leave the rest to her discretion. The royal guards moved swiftly. Jewelry, gowns, letters, and cherished possessions. Each item carried the faint scent of lavender and thyme, of love and loss. They were carefully placed into a waiting carriage, with Aria standing tall despite the flutter of emotions within her. Lady Evelina sputtered, trying to regain some authority. This is outrageous, you dare— Kyle cut her off with a low growl, eyes blazing with restrained power. You do not deserve her. You never did. You will have nothing more to do with her life. Aria's wolf stirred, sensing the dominance of the alpha beside her and the injustice of her past. She stepped forward, placing her hand lightly on Kyle's arm. Enough, she said firmly. I forgive them, but I do not wish to have anything further to do with them. Kyle's jaw clenched, and then slowly he nodded, acknowledging her authority and her mercy. Together, they stepped into the carriage, leaving the manor and the past behind them. The royal guards fell silent, forming a protective perimeter as the carriage departed. Even the servants watched, awed by the alpha and his chosen Luna, understanding that no force in the kingdom could oppose this union. As the palace gates loomed closer, Aria finally allowed herself to breathe. She touched the pink choker that had once been her mother's, and felt a surge of pride and love. Her past was a shadow, yes, but now it no longer defined her. Her mother's legacy was hers, her wolf awakened, her bond with Kyle solidified. Kyle turned toward her, amber eyes glowing softly. This is only the beginning, he said. You are mine. We will face the world together, and nothing, no one, will ever suppress you again. Aria's chest swelled. She had dreamed of this night, of freedom, of recognition. And now, standing beside her alpha, she knew, at last, that she was home, fully seen, fully alive, and fully bound to the one she was destined to mate with. The carriage rolled onward, moonlight dancing across the palace walls as the two wolves, Mate and Alpha, prepared to face the world together. Their hearts, their spirits, their power, all aligned. And in that alignment, nothing could stand against them. Chapter 7, Happily Ever After. The palace gardens were alive with the soft glow of lanterns and the silver light of the full moon. Aria walked alongside Kyle, her hand comfortably in his, her wolf fully awakened and coursing through her veins. Every sense was heightened, the scent of blooming jasmine, the warmth of Kyle's presence, the whisper of the wind through the trees, and for the first time, she felt completely whole. She looked up at him, amber eyes filled with awe and love. I never imagined any of this, she whispered, voice trembling with happiness. To feel seen, to feel alive, and to have you— Kyle's hand tightened around hers, protective yet gentle. You are mine, Aria, and I am yours. The moon itself marked us. Nothing in this kingdom, nothing in the world can change that. He drew her close, his lips brushing hers in a kiss that was both tender and commanding. It was a kiss that spoke of promise, of passion, of destiny fulfilled. Her wolf purred within her, reveling in the bond, the recognition, the security of her mate beside her. The palace was no longer merely a place of splendor. It was a home, a sanctuary for two bonded souls. Servants and guards moved around them with quiet respect, for all knew the power of the Alpha and his Luna. Kyle led her to the chamber that would be hers, once only a shadowed dream, a room filled with soft silks, ancient heirlooms, and the faint lingering scent of lavender. Her mother's belongings had been carefully arranged, each item a bridge between her past and her future. Aria ran her fingers over the fabrics and jewelry, tears of gratitude and joy glistening in her eyes. I can finally honor her," she murmured. "And I can live without fear, without hiding. Because of you, because of us." Kyle's hand rested on the small of her back, his thumb brushing lightly over the curve of her waist. "You are no longer the girl who scrubbed floors and hid behind dust," he said. "You are Luna now, Aria. Strong, radiant, and feared by no one." Her wolf growled softly, a sound of contentment and excitement. Aria realized she was not merely Kyle's mate. She was his equal, his partner, his other half. Together they would command the kingdom, protect the wolves, and honor the legacy of the Silverwood bloodline. Outside, the moon shone like a guardian in the sky. The gardens were silent now, save for the whisper of leaves and the distant call of nightbirds. Aria leaned into Kyle, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. The world felt vast, yet safe, and for the first time she allowed herself to dream. "Together," she whispered. "Forever," Kyle replied. Their lips met again, softer this time, full of unspoken promises. The Alpha and his Luna, bonded by fate and destiny, began their life together, leaving shadows, cruelty, and sorrow behind. The kingdom would come to know the strength of the Alpha and his Luna, but tonight there was only moonlight love, and the quiet triumph of a young girl who had finally found her place in the world. And so, under the silver gaze of the moon and the watchful stars above, Aria and Kyle stepped forward, not as master and servant, not as prince and unknown maiden, but as two wolves bound for life, destined to roam together, powerful, unbroken, and forever united. The story of Aria Silverwood and Kyle Arden became legend, whispered in the halls of the palace and the forests alike, a tale of resilience, awakening, and the eternal power of fated love. And in the quiet moments, when the moon bathed them in silver light, they knew that they were home, the end. If you enjoyed this book, please like, share, and subscribe for more audiobooks by Maple. See you next time.